Hello, I'm Alison Roman. I am here in my living room among all my beautiful children, and I am here today to answer your most pressing pie questions. First, I want to say that I've been doing this ask a question, I'll answer it for years, mostly about holiday cookies or Thanksgiving hotlines and whatever, but I don't know that I've ever received so many questions on one subject as I have on pie. I know that it can be intimidating. It can feel like a thing that only professionals can do or that you can only buy at a bakery, but making pie is not that challenging. I think with a few sort of tips or what to do whens, you will have a much different experience. So I think that if somebody else has a question, you probably have that same question at some point. So let's get into it. How can I stop a crimped edge from collapsing in the oven? You'll notice that when I crimped my last pie, I made sure that the dough was sitting on top of the pie lip. Pie dishes are shaped a certain way, they have that, half-inch border on them for a reason, and that's to give the dough something to rest on. If the dough, when it goes into the oven, is already over that edge, then it's probably gonna bake and slump even further. So that will collapse that way. If you're talking about a crimped edge that you're blind baking collapsing into the pie dish in the oven, that's because your pie crust has been overworked. The more worked a pie crust becomes, the tighter the protein structures are, and it gets really tight. So it shrinks, so it collapses inside the pie dish. Can I achieve a good crust with mostly whole wheat flour? I've not done this because I don't like the flavor of it, but I would say that it's gonna be a lot more challenging to work with because you've got, again, a different protein structure in the whole wheat flour versus white flour. There are people that specialize in whole grain baking that have achieved this with wonderful success. There's bakeries all over the country. That's not my specialty, so I don't have any tips for that. All I know is that when I bake with whole grain flour, I like to swap about no more than 25% whole grain, like a whole wheat flour for all purpose. How long does an extra dough last in the fridge? I would use your dough within a week. You can freeze it for up to a month, but I would say use the dough in the fridge within a week's time. I always have soggy bottoms. That's funny. What gives? A soggy bottom is probably because A, your filling doesn't have enough thickener, so it's producing a lot of liquid with nothing to thicken it up, or you're just not baking your pie long enough, which I feel like is almost always the answer. Baking your pie long enough will solve a lot of problems, including a soggy bottom. And if by a soggy bottom you mean it feels greasy and limp, and when you slice the pie, it doesn't hold its shape, that's because it needs to bake for longer. You need to bake the flour and the butter together till it gets hard and crunchy. My raw pie crust always breaks when transferring it from the counter to the pie pan. How to avoid this? The best way to avoid this is by flouring the top and the bottom of your pie crust repeatedly. And not just, you pick it up, you dust it with flour, you roll it. You pick it up, you dust it with flour, you roll it. Just doing that repeatedly is gonna make sure that you're not pressing the pie dough into the counter, which will, reveal those sheets of butter, which then kind of get soft and then stick to the countertop. You just wanna make sure that you're constantly flouring. Other people prefer to roll out on parchment, and that ensures that it'll never stick to the countertop, but it can still stick to the parchment. Another way to just effortlessly transfer it, if you've been flouring it properly, is to roll it up on a rolling pin, and then you can roll it back out. Doing it on the rolling pin keeps it intact and is a very foolproof way, I think, to transfer it from counter to sheet pan to pie dish to whatever. What is your absolute favorite pie tin or baking dish? My absolute favorite pie tin or baking dish is a classic 9-inch Pyrex baking dish. And I like glass because it conducts heat very evenly. And when you're baking the pie, you can see that the bottom of the pie is baked through. You can see the sides are baked through. You can see that it's golden brown. A glass pie plate will tell you a lot about your pie as it's in progress. Can you always use a buttermilk wash and an egg wash interchangeably? No, I would say, but if you don't have an egg, you can definitely brush your pie with heavy cream or buttermilk or even milk. Sprinkle your sugar and bake it. No one will really be able to tell the difference. I think an egg wash gets much shinier and glistenier, and I think it always looks nicer. But if you're just looking for something to adhere the sugar to, buttermilk, heavy cream, milk will all work. Do we truly need a pie pan? I have zero room for new things in my kitchen. Yeah, you do. It's, you know me, I don't love a single-use tool, but I bake a lot of things in a pie plate. I bake eggplant parm in that pie plate, potato gratin. I use it as a breading station for cutlets. You can bake a cobbler in it. You can, you can do a lot of things in that pie plate. It's not just for pie, but you kind of can't really make a pie like in a baking dish. Otherwise, it's a different beast. Dough hydration is so tough. What are some visual cues that it's had enough or too much? That's a great question, and you're totally correct. Dough hydration is very tough because what happens is you have to sort of trust yourself that the dough is going to continue to hydrate as it rests. And this is across the board for bread dough, for pasta dough, for anything that you're adding flour and a liquid. Things will continue to hydrate as they sit. So as we put our pie dough away right after we've made it, it may look a little dry in spots, and you may go, there's no way that this is gonna be easy to roll out. But as it sits, and once you unroll it, you're like, oh, this is completely transformed. Now it's smooth and shiny and like no longer a pile of crumbs. And that's just through the magic of hydration. Marry, kill, blueberry, key lime, pumpkin. I'm gonna marry blueberry, I'm gonna key lime, and I'm gonna kill pumpkin. I think pumpkin is stupid. How do you get the first slice out without it ending up being a hot mess? Well, and I had another question, which was, can I get an AR hot take pie? This is the same answer, which is I don't believe pie should ever be hot. I think the only time your pie should be hot is when it comes out of the oven. And at that point, you're gonna let it rest for like another hour. Pie should not be hot. It should be room temperature or cold at best. And I just feel like there's too much pressure on like a warm pie. Your fruit liquid, as it cools, is going to firm up, it's going to gel, it's going to chill. If you ever made jam, again, jam is hot in the pot and firm in the fridge. Wow. Wow.
Do you celebrate though?
Yeah, should we put that on a shirt? Same thing with your inner pie, right? Like it comes out of the oven, it's gonna be really hot. And so those juices are gonna be liquidy. So if you slice into that pie, the juices are gonna go absolutely everywhere. Let it sit, let it firm up, let it gel, let the juices cool, let everything thicken. Then you can slice it and it won't be a hot mess. Can you make me a good gluten-free pie recipe, please? Honestly, I probably could one day. I'm not gonna do that right now. It's not my specialty. It's not my lifestyle. I respect it. And there are so many wonderful people out there doing it really, really well that have sort of dedicated their lives to researching and trial and error and making really amazing, foolproof, gluten-free dessert recipes, but I am not your gluten-free gal. Is pie acceptable as an alternative to cake at weddings? Absolutely. I once made pies, actually for 2 weddings I did desserts for once upon a time. I did pies in addition to wedding cake because I'm a pie person, not a cake person, but I do think that like instead of cake is also a great option.
What kind of pies do you do for the wedding?
I did like a strawberry lemon, I did a blueberry something, and an apple something. And then for another party, I think I did like a lemon pie, like a lemon chess pie, or like a whole lemon pie maybe. I love pie. God, I love pie.